Hi and welcome back to another Alpha Challenge video. In this video you'll see me playing Zarimi Priest, and in this video you'll also see me try climb to top 100 legend. I do end up getting relatively high in terms of my climb. I only lose a few games in the process as well. In this gameplay footage you'll see that I mulligan for a certain few select cards. I always will mulligan for Gifted Wrapped Whelp and Miracle Salesman. Ships Cherrigan and Crimson Clergy are also cards that you'll think of mulliganing for. If you have one of your 1-drops that you want, you can keep Orbital Halo, and you also sometimes will want to be keeping the Time Winder Zarimi as well, because that card ultimately enables you to combo down your opponent as quick as possible. The other card that you could also keep in your opening hand is Gorgonzoru. And with that card, it can be useful to establish tempo on the board, but it can also be useful for making sure that you have a big buff turn when you use your Time Winder, because if it gets to, say, three 8-mana cards, you'll end up seeing that you can just combo them down in one turn, even if you don't have a board, with the Time Winder Zarimi as well. In this first set of gameplay footage, you'll see that I'm playing against a Hunter. Hunter usually is a Discover Hunter. Sometimes they'll play Starship Hunter as well. What I have noticed from this game is that I am playing against Discover Hunter. The idea for this matchup is to make sure that you're establishing tempo and establishing board, because they do have the alien encounters, which will mean that you don't have too much to deal with it. What I'm surprised about here is that they do end up playing the Starship. I play down my Dream Master down, and I decide to get ones that impact the battlefield because I am hoping for a silence. I end up getting a quality and so I essentially get a board wipe using these two cards. So it's quite a good draw for me for the following future turns. If the opponent does end up just building a board that has a lot of taunts, it means that they'll feel like they're in a false sense of security as well with their safety. So I have a turn 7 play, turn 7 play that I can use. I also have the Time Winder in my hand as well, so it means that I can establish a board, I can put down the Time Winder, establish a board, and then I can just take out their entire field and do a lot of damage to them. So what my game plan here is, I'm trying to make sure that I can keep control of the board while also making sure that I am getting to a point where I can combo them down in a single turn. So what I end up doing here is I'm thinking about whether I should trade or whether to go face, especially since they have Ziliax on the board. I don't have enough right now, minion-wise, to deal with the Ziliax quite efficiently. I'd have to trade 3 to 1 into it, so I end up going face here because I know that I do have the board clear if I need to. Even with Ziliax's buff, I can use a quality and then use the 2 damage to all enemy minions at the same time, and this ultimately means that I don't have to really worry about if they keep the Ziliax on the board too much, because at the moment they can trade 2 of their minions, but I still will have the following set of minions as well. They end up using the alien encounters here, which is a bit of a problem for me in terms of them having a few minions to deal with. So right here, I end up just determining what I'm going to do. So I'm right now thinking about how many cards I've got in my hand, because I want to make sure that I can use the 5-mana drop, because I currently don't have the Time Winder online. With the Time Winder, the goal is that I want to make sure that I'm all ready to use it to take out the opponent. In this footage as well, you'll see that I have the Thrifty Drifters. I have 2 options that I could do with here. I could establish a board and keep it for the Time Winder turn, or I could just make it so I have a wider board. Because I'm playing against Hunter, quite often they don't have ways to clear the board too efficiently, so I end up just playing them down. Because with the Time Winder turn, you can also use those to make it so you have extra damage to deal with the opponent. And since I have the equality and the stars, it means that I can take out the opponent quite easily. They have Ethereal Oracle, but once again, since Hunter doesn't really have too many ways to deal with the board like this, I end up just continuing to go into them. And the following turn I have Lethal on board because I can use Equality and then the Starfield onto them. And I just put Well Played in because they don't have any way of clearing me, so I use Equality. then I use the Starfall. I put the 2 damage to all enemy minions, because although the buff is coming from the Ziliax to drop it from, instead of 1 health to 2, it still is enough to take out the opponent. And then that's my first of the wins that we're recording. In the next gameplay footage, I'm playing against Mage. Mage has had a lot of nerfs as of late, and pretty much the only viable deck that is on ladder at the moment is Elemental Mage, even though Elemental Mage isn't that great. You'll notice that in this hand I have 4 1-drops, which is a fantastic start for this deck. I have a few options that I can do in terms of playing against them, but ultimately it's going to more than likely be the Gifted Whelp into the 1/1 with the coin, because this allows me to have a 2/3. There's not too many plays that they can do to deal with this. They can use their 1 mana spell, but that's about it, and that would slow them down a lot to be using that as well onto my board. Since they don't have it, I don't have to worry too much about that, and I just they end up just going face because they don't have any trade that they can do. The following turn, I am just thinking and deciding what I'm going to do. I play down my other 1-drops because they're going to get little buffs up, and I end up trading into the 2/3, so then I can also trade into the 2/1s that are here. The next turn, I'm going to be able to use one of my overheal cards, which will be very useful to draw a card, but also establish more of the board. I'm also seeing right now if I do have a 1-drop, but I don't have another one, which is fine. Last turn I could have played down one of my 2-drops to make it so I have a more efficient mana curve, but because I wanted to get more minions down the board, I decided to use it in this way instead. They freeze my Miracle Salesman here, which isn't too much of an issue, especially since I can just use my 2-drop there to overheal my Crimson Clergy, because then I get 1 draw through that, and then I also will get another draw as well at the end of the turn with my Hidden Gem. This turn that they have, they get quite unlucky with their Remnant because they don't get to clear anything, and this ends up allowing me to have complete control over them. I end up this following turn going for the clear onto the Tainted Remnant, and I'm just deciding, I'm looking at the amount of cards in my hand right now to think of how I can, if I'm going to end up using the 5-drop there. I do the Snake Oil trade first to draw into a card, and then I can use the Orbital Halo to buff up one of my minions some more. I'm just deciding here whether to put it onto my Hidden Gem or into my Clergy, and I decide the Hidden Gem just because with the extra draws that it's providing, it's allowing me quite a lot, and it's also, in this matchup, it's quite board control, unless they use unless they make their big board and then use the Solar Eclipse onto me. This following turn, I'm looking at how much my Time Winder has, and I'm just trying to get as much as I can onto it. I end up just going all into the face here because they don't really run too many taunts in this deck, and as soon as I get the Time Winder online, it means that I'll be able to just take them out the following turn. They end up using their Lamplighter as well here, and it's not very useful for them because I do still have a complete control of the board. I'm also right now looking to see if I have which minion I'm going to use so I can get the Orbital Halo online. This will allow me to trade efficiently into their 5/5. I could also just go face in this situation since I am in quite a positive situation. I do make sure that I take out the Flame here, because if I don't, it means that they could possibly create a big board that at 4/3s, and since this deck doesn't really run too many AoEs, it means that I could have a little bit of trouble in the following turns. With this board, I also am quite established in terms of what they can do. Like, they could use the Solar Eclipse if they have both of them, but since they haven't really had that combo turn anyway, I'm not too worried about it. And with the amount of damage that I have on board, I'm quite safe in terms of taking out the opponent. And I do end up drawing into my drawing enough into my so I can use the Time Winder this following turn. It means that I'll have enough damage to deal with their board. I end up just going face here, I get the extra turn, and then I have enough damage the following turn to take them out, and then they just go for the concede. This following game's against Rogue. Quite often with Rogue, it's either Starship or in Cycle Rogue. Cycle Rogue is a bit of a challenging deck to be playing against, just simply because it does have the ability to use the Incendious, and that ends up dealing quite a lot of damage, as well as getting, if they get the Playhouse Giants online, there isn't too many ways that this deck can deal with them, especially with the rush that is involved, because this deck does try to control the board a little bit while also dealing some chip damage, and then the following turn being able to take out the opponent's board. What I end up doing in this situation is I get all my minions down at the board. I play down the 1-2 down first, just so I can get the extra health onto my Clergy. This following turn I end up getting the Overheal, which is quite a good card to be drawing in this situation. Gorgonzoru wouldn't be a bad card to be playing down either, because it would allow me to get the cheese online earlier, and it means that I can draw an extra card. I'm not too worried about them using W's Purchase, even though that did get the best minion that they possibly could. Since I drew into the Time Winder here, I end up going for the heal first, just to draw an extra card, and then I attack into them some more, because ultimately I want to be trying to get as much that I can online as quick as possible. This does show that they are playing, as well with that drop, they are playing Starship Rogue. I get the Gorgonzoru down, because I know that this game can end up being quite long, especially with them having that down, and then I am just deciding which way is the best way to trade into them, because I could go the 2-4 and then the others, but I end up just trading the Miracle Salesman and then going for the trade. I draw into the Whelp, which is another good way to buff up some more minions in my hand, while also getting down another dragon down for the Time Winder. What I'm thinking here that they're going to do, since they're at the 5 mana, I'm not too worried about what their draw is going to be, because usually it is just playing down the 5 mana Pirate to set up for following turns. Since I've got quite an established board, there isn't too much that they can do to take out all my minions at the same time, unless they used Ethereal Oracle plus Prep plus all that other stuff that's involved for it, so I'm not too concerned of them taking me fully out. They end up trading quite well into my boards, and it leaves a 3-2 down on the board, so it's not too much of an issue. And since right now I have 6 damage on board, I'm not too concerned about not having enough damage to take them out in the following turns. I end up doing the trade into them, and then I hit with my fishing rod, because I'm trying to get the other 1-2 out of my deck. I don't end up getting it, which is fine. And then I play down my minions the following turn. I'm also right now making sure that I have enough with the... I'm also right now thinking if I have enough with the Time Winder. And if I do end up getting the Time Winder, it means that I can control the board quite well with the delicious cheese as well. They end up having the Ethereal Oracle in their hand, and then they use Tarstick, which means that it's going to be quite likely they'll use Fan of Knives in the following part, and then they can take control of my board, so this is a bit of a weakness involved with it. Since they don't end up drawing into that, it's quite positive for me, because if they did, I would be in a situation where I could possibly lose. Not very likely, since they only have 11 health, but it is possible. Especially with how my board is set up, and I also have the cheese in my hand. My Time Winder still isn't active just yet, so I could have played down the one drop. I don't have a way to play down the Time Winder just yet as well, since I can't clear the minions on my board. Drawing into the 1-2 was quite useful for it, but I end up just trading into the opponent. I end up just deciding and counting right here that if I have lethal with the Orbital Halo, which I do end up having, because I have 8 damage on board, plus the 2 more makes 10. And then I take out the opponent that's there. I'm just making sure that I have enough. Okay, going into this game, I'm playing against Hunter again, so it's quite likely that they will be using a Discover Hunter. So it's either going to be Starship Hunter or just the plain Discover Hunter. Not many people play the Trample Hunter, even though I believe it's one of the strongest decks of the Hunter archetypes. I have a lot of 1-drops in my hand, which is quite good, especially drawing into the Thrifty Drifter. I play down the Miracle Salesman because it's the best of the 1-drops to be playing in this situation. I don't have a way to heal the Clergy at the moment, and I want to be establishing as much board as possible. And the Gifted Whelp, since I don't have a dragon in my hand, it means that I don't have a way to buff it or the dragon in my hand as well, so there's no point playing that one down. I play down the 2/3 as this turn just so I can get the minion onto the field and get my taunt ready. I have the Gifted Whelp this turn, so I end up going for the Gifted Whelp. I buff up my 1 mana, and I also play down my 2/3. This then activates the Orbital Halo, and I can trade into the 3/4 very efficiently, and then I can attack into the opponent's face. So once again, the idea of this deck is you want to make sure that you're establishing board and dealing as much chip damage as possible, while also deciding what is the best play in terms of making sure that the opponent doesn't have a way to take out all your minions very efficiently and very easily. The thing that I'd be most scared of in this situation, since all of my minions have 3 health, is a rat trap or also an ice trap. I do have the coin, so I'm not too worried about the ice trap, but for the rat trap, I need to be making sure that I'm very mindful about it, because if they play it down and they get control of the board, I am in a little bit of a situation. I end up testing first to see what they have. I use it onto my Gifted Whelp because it is a way to buff it. It's also the minion that's most likely to die if they do a freezing trap. If they have explosive trap and freezing trap. And then I just hit all my minions into them and pass the turn over to them. They don't really have any setup on board right now, and I have quite a strong board, so I'm not too worried if they're what they're really going to do here. They could get the alien encounters out, which is, a bit of a problem in terms of what my hand is. I do recognize now that they're playing the Starship Hunter as well, and they get the alien encounters down too. With the 4/7 that's on their board, it is a little bit of a problem to deal with for me, especially since if I play down my Whelp, it means that it just gets killed straight away. So I end up coining here, and then I do the silence onto the Starship because I don't want my Whelp to die. I also don't want to take a lot of damage through it. I play down my my Naga as well to make sure that I can draw an extra card with Clergy, while also getting more cards from my deck. I could have in this situation attacked into them with the 1/2 and the 2/1, but it wouldn't really do very much, and I don't want to waste any of my possibility of trading more efficiently into them.
These could belong to a brand new species.
They end up getting the Scout here, which could be a bit of a concern if they do have the alien encounters. I'm not too worried about any of the traps that they use, because if they use it for the traps, it means they have to use the rest of their turn forging the trap and then using the trap. They use the Mixologist here, which is a way to clear my board, or few minions for my board, especially if they have the 2 damage AoE that they get from it. But I'm not too concerned because I still have quite a few minions that do have a lot more, have more health than 2. What they were hoping there was they were hoping to hit the Dreamboat. I end up playing just down the 6 drop just straight onto the board here. Oh, I'm thinking about whether to play the 6 drop straight down onto the board here because it allows me to get my Time Winder online. And it also means that I've got the Miniaturize down too. I don't go for a trade here just because the 2/3 doesn't really mean anything to me in this situation. And if they end up killing my my Clay Dragon, it won't be too much of a concern because they will end up increasing the likelihood of my Time Winder going off this game. There's not really much they can discover here that can deal with my board, especially since I only have a few minions that have 2 health left on them, and they only have a few health left. If they end up using the alien encounters, I'm not too concerned about it either, just because I do have quite a bit in my hand that can deal with them, and then they end up conceding anyway. This following game is into Death Knight. With Death Knight, it's quite common that they're playing the Rainbow Death Knight archetype, which can be a bit of concern for my deck. especially if they end up getting the overheal, because they also do have ways to control the board quite easily. I end up doing my usual mulligan to try and get as many of the 1-drops as possible into my hand, and I do the coin play as well here, just because it means that my minions are more buff to possibly deal with what they have. I don't play down the Miracle Salesman here, just because if they end up getting the 2 mana rush minion, it won't be a way to clear my clergy. It ultimately could be or was a bit of a misplay, especially since I've had the overheal in my hand. It would allow me to draw an extra card, which would have been a lot more useful than what I ended up having here. And also in that situation, I wanted to try and get as safe as possible. I wasn't really expecting the Frost Strike, because quite a lot of the Rainbow decks aren't using that sort of style. They're more so using decks to control the board and then deal a lot of damage with their 10 mana spell. I play down the Gifted Whelp here after drawing cards, because I want to make sure that I can I end up using the Gifted Whelp here just after I end up drawing the 2 cards with my Scaled card. And in this situation here, I also want to be trying to get as much down as possible. So I get down my 3/2, I play down my Thirsty Drifter, and then I'm also going to buff the Whelp, because I don't want to give them too much possibility of being able to deal with my board as easily. And I split the damage and health amongst them. Going into this turn, I have 2 options that I could do with that silence. I can either silence the 3/2 or the 2/2. I'd much rather the silence going on to the drawing a card rather than the frost spell, because it is possible they don't have any more frost spells in that situation. They obviously did because they draw a card, but it's more possible. It's more likely that they'd have no frost spell rather than drawing a card. I also wasn't really thinking much around Frost Strike as well in that situation either. So if I did do that again, I probably would have deafened the 3/2. And they end up drawing quite a few cards with this combo place. They are using a complete Frost package for their deck. I play down the Clay Miniaturized here. And then the following turn, I can also get a lot more down onto my board. I can play the 1/1, I can play the Thirsty Drifter, and then I can play Ziliax as well. The deck that they're playing doesn't really have any silences either, so I'm not too worried about just playing down the Clay Dragon straight away. They end up having to use quite a lot of their cards to deal into it as well, and since it ends up coming back with a 4/4 with elusive, I'm not too concerned about what they could do. I'm also right now thinking of how many dragons that I've played down, because I do end up getting into the Time Winders Zarimi as well in this turn. I play down all my minions because it's not very likely that they have any way to clear my board. And I get rid of the Ethereal Oracle because that is probably the only card that could deal with my board that's here. And then I pass the turn over to the opponent. They don't really have too much here. Like, in that situation, it's quite likely that I could have just kept my Thrifty Drifter and my Ziliax, or just my Thrifty Drifter. Especially since I had the Time Winder that was going to be coming online in the following turn. They end up using the Frostworm's Fury here, getting themselves into a sense of security of going, they're definitely going to survive since I don't have a way to deal with their board. They end up, so it ends up just giving them an extra turn of availability. They use the Fury again, and then they believe that they're in a situation of being able to just take me out the following turn, since I don't have any more taunts on my field. But since I have the Time Winder in my hand, it means that I can just use it end turn, and then the frost will, the freeze will end up not activating anymore. So I pass the turn, I get my extra turn, everything's back active again, and then I can attack into the opponent. This game's against Priest, and it's quite likely that they are playing the same deck as me, the Timewinder Priest. There are a few control priests that are on High Legend ladder at the moment that I ended up. One example was I ended up going up against one yesterday, and it caught me completely off guard because I was thinking that I was just playing against the Timewinder deck, and it plays completely different to how the Timewinder deck plays as well, so it was very interesting to play against it. I end up just playing down my Gifted Whelp and passing the turn over to them. Having the Timewinder in this situation is quite beneficial for me, and with my draws that are in my hand, I don't really have a very good way to deal with them, so I play down the trusty, the fishing rod, and then I just attack in the opponent's face, hoping to get some more minions down on board. The 1-2 is probably the worst draw that I could have in this situation, especially since they can trade quite easily into it. They obviously end up doing that because it's not a very useful minion to have in that situation. So if I had the following turn, I probably would have just kept the fishing rod the extra turn and hoped to draw into something a bit more beneficial for me. I end up attacking into the 1-2, hoping to get the other 1-2 onto my field, but I don't end up hitting it. I get the Clergy, and then I end up healing up the Clergy as well to draw an extra card, and then I put the Divine Shield down onto it because I want to try and cost them as much as possible. If they have the Definite, it is a bit of a problem in that situation, especially since they can then remove my card draw. But if they don't, I'm in a situation that's quite strong, or a lot stronger than what I was. They do end up having the Deafen, so they are able to take out my 1-3 and then put more damage onto it. But their board is starting to get to a point where it's not, where it is quite strong as well, so it is a little bit of an issue for me. I end up drawing into the Deafen, which is quite good, and I take out the minion that's going to buff them up the most, since my hand is relatively decent in terms of being able to combo them down. I'm just hoping that their cards aren't very useful as well. So they end up using Scale Replica, which is a great card to be making sure you draw into what you need to, but it also means that you don't have, it means that you sometimes don't get the Timewinder because you may have the Clay Dragon out instead. I draw into Gorgonzoru, which is a fantastic card in this situation. It allows me to get back some of my board, and I also do play down the Delicious Cheese in hope that I can get some minions down to get back a little bit more control of the board. Right now I'm looking at Free Spirit and I'm thinking if it gives me 1 extra armor, since even though it obviously doesn't because I restore health rather than armor.
Starting the operation.
So the following turn I do have the clay dragon to be able to put down. They also then do some trading as well into my board, which is okay for me since they haven't dealt that much damage to me at all. I do have my 1-3 that's here, so I can take out one of their minions that are here. And drawing into the Dreamboat is quite positive for me in the following turns. My Timewinder is going to be live in a few turns as well, so it means that if they don't get their Timewinder out, I should be in a situation where I can end up taking back the control of this game. They end up showing that they got the Clay Dragon through their Scaled Replica, so it is a possibility that I can get my Timewinder active first, which is going to be very positive in the following turns. I end up drawing a Manthul, which is fantastic in this situation, because it puts them a couple of turns behind with their Timewinder, so I end up using it, and then I remove the 2 dragons from the game. I'm also right now trying to make sure that that Titan issue isn't affecting me as well, because it has frozen the game. I end up choosing Kayn Sunfree because it's quite likely they will try and establish some taunt minions as well to get them into a false sense of security. And you'll notice in the rest of this game that I end up using that Kayn quite efficiently. They use their own one, which is a bit of an issue for me, but since I've already used my Clay Dragon efficiently, I've been able to get the extra dragon proc off, which is very positive. As we're getting closer and closer to being at full amount of mana in our mana pool, I am getting to a situation where I can combo them down since I do have the Time Wander in my hand. I'm right there, I'm just seeing how many I have left on the Time Wander. I think it said 2, if I remember correctly. So I play down all the stuff that I can as quickly as like as much as possible down that I can, and then I'm just trying to get some sort of control back down on the board. I play down the Dreamboat as well, just to get myself a little bit, have an extra minion down on the field as well. And with their Amanthal, they do have a few targets that they could choose. Because I ended up seeing that one was through the I end up seeing that one was through I end up realizing that they are using the synchronized list, which then gets them another one. They play it down and then they remove a bunch of my minions from the board. They obviously will remove the dragon. I wasn't really expecting that to happen, so with my hand setup that I have here, I'm not in a very positive situation. But all I need is one extra dragon, and that means that I can just take out the opponent in the following turn, since I have the Kayn Sunfree on the board. So they end up doing a few unfavorable trades into my Thirsty Drifter. I played out my Dream Planner's Zephyrus as well, and I'm trying to deal with their board, so I use the board bit, and I don't really get a very positive outcome. What I end up doing in this situation is I do end up just using the Siphon Soul, and I decide to get rid of the higher cost minion because I know that I don't really care if they end up getting a Taunt with Lifesteal out. They end up playing down the Toyosaurus, which is a very large minion. Chilling Vol'jin, I was thinking Chilling Vol'jin could be a quite useful card in this situation, and the only card that saves me in this situation as well is I need to get a 1 mana dragon. Then with the 1 mana dragon I can just take out the opponent's board. They used the Snake Eyes. There wasn't really any use for it. Like, it's just to put some more minions down into the field for them. And I think to maybe get a 5 and a 6 drop, but I don't really think that it really impacted the game at all. So they end up just ending their turn. Oh, they play down the Clergy and then they end their turn, so they have a full board right now. I draw into the dragon, so I play it down. Then I play down my Kayn, and I play down my Time Winder. I deal all the damage that I can to the opponent's face, and then the following turn I have enough to deal the rest of it to the opponent as well. So it goes to my extra turn, and then I have enough on board to be able to take them out. I could have obviously played the Flame Strike for a little bit extra BM, but there's no point in doing that. So this matchup shows that I'm starting to get higher on the ladder, especially since I'm playing against someone that's ranked in the early 200s. Once again, my Mulligan is just trying to get the low mana minions, so Miracle Salesman, my Clergy, my other 2 1 mana dragons. The Gorgon is quite useful here, and I do end up just playing down so I have a positive curve using the Hidden Gem rather than using the Gifted Whelp, especially since it is possible they could be running Backstab. But obviously they show that they're playing Starship since they end up playing that down. I can't play down the Whelp this turn because their Star Piece is just going to attack into it. But since the Star Piece does auto attack, it means my Gorgonzoru is healthy again since I have Hidden Gem down on the board. They're obviously right now going for a the the one that deals the 2 damage AoE with the heat wave, and then they can clear my board completely doing that. Drawing into Scale Replica is a very positive card to be drawing. I use it first, even though I probably should have used the trade for the oil, but I could, with doing that, it means that I draw into a minion, and I can play down my 1 mana minion, also play down the other 1 mana minion as well. They use the W's purchase, but they don't have the combo active, so it means that I end up keeping my board, which is quite positive. And since they also are playing Starship Rogue, it's quite important to go aggressive against them, since they usually don't have a way to clear your board very quickly and very easily. And the deck does try and establish a bit of a tempo play before they try and do anything else. And since they're at their turn 5 play, they don't really have too much to be able to do in this situation either. What I do here is I end up just I'm deciding how I'm going to trade into them, because I want to trade as least as possible while also keeping my board quite healthy. So I end up making sure that I play down my dragon, and then I keep my my buffs going onto my minions as well. They don't really have too many ways to be able to deal with my board as well, even if they activate the Starship. Especially with turn 7, I do have a Mantle to be able to remove the Starship from the game, which is probably the way that they'd be hoping to survive here. And then they end up just conceding anyway, because they could have used the Starship, but the writing was on the wall of what would happen the following turns anyway. Okay, so I'm going against a Druid. Pretty much all Druids are playing Dungar Druid at the moment, so my Mulligan once again will stay the same anyway, so I play down my Gifted Whelp on turn 1. It's a great draw to end up getting that 1-drop into my hand, because it buffs both minions. If I didn't, I probably still would have played it down anyway. So this turn I play down the Hidden Gem, because it's best to stay on curve in this situation too. And then the following turn, I'm thinking whether I play down what my play is going to be, so it's probably going to be the Fishing Rod. And they've got quite a weaker start, since they did start with the coin, but they don't have any ramp right now, so I end up taking full advantage of it and attacking with my Hidden Gem. They end up getting it, so I end up realizing that it's possible they may just be going for the Crystal Cluster turn, because with the coin they can use Crystal Cluster on the following turn. So I attack into the opponent with all my minions that are here, and then I do a quick heal onto the Clergy, which means that I have a much wider board, and then I pass the turn over to them. Next turn I do have the Dream Planner's Zephyrus. In conjunction with my board that's here, I am in a very positive situation, so I'm just right now counting up how much damage I have. I also use it to get the dealing opponents to the opponent's hero, and getting the Frostbolt and Soulfire is definitely plenty to be able to deal with them. So I use the Soulfire here since I do have enough lethal. If I didn't, that's the reason why I attacked before I used any of the spells, so I didn't have to count too much. I would have used the Frostbolt and just kept the 1 extra health that's there. Going against a Rogue, once again it's quite similar. You want to make sure that you're mulliganing for your 1-drops. I keep the 2-drop here just because if it is Starship Rogue, it means that I can get the Taunt minion down. It's also quite strong against Weapon Rogue too, because with Weapon Rogue, they will try, obviously, deal as much damage to your face as possible. And if you're getting taunts in their way, it means that it's quite likely that they will use it like that. Since they got a coin, I do recognize that it's quite likely that they are playing Weapon Rogue, because there are a few pirates in Starship Rogue, but quite often you won't draw into them, since there's about 10 minions or so that aren't pirates in that deck. So they end up getting their quick pick online, and then they attack into my face. So what I need to do here is make sure that I get my taunt minion down with as much health as possible. So I play down all my 1-drops, and then I pass the turn over to them. This following turn, they do have obviously a way to clear it if they do have the 3-drop, which I'm assuming that they did get with it, and then they do reveal right now that they have their 3-drop. This results in them having to attack into my taunt minion, And I trade quite unfavorably into the 3/3 here as well, because I want to make sure that I keep my taunt minions coming and continuing on, because it reduces down the likelihood of them being able to deal with me. So I played out my taunt. I use the deafen because there's not many minions in that deck as well. I heal first to see if I can draw into something that's positive. I also trade my Miracle Salesman because it's not a great positive trade, but it means that I keep my Clergy as well to be able to draw some more cards if I need them. So with the misfire, it is quite positive for them to be able to deal with my board here. They're able to clear most of the minions at the same time, but it means that their weapon isn't getting it buffed up anymore, and they're also having to deal with a minion. Weapon Rogue pretty much always wants to go face towards you. So this following turn, I played down my 5-drop, I think. Yeah, I played down my 5-drop and draw some cards. If it draws into any of my spells, it's not too positive because it just gives them over spells that are essentially useless for them. I'm also not really concerned if they end up using, if I mulligan many of the cards as well. And then they end up getting the turn. I also want to make sure that I have as many of these minions down as possible. I've also got the Thrifty Drifter down too, which means that they've got 2 minions to have to deal with as well. And I use the overloaded heal before I use Ziliax because I want to make sure that I get my Ziliax down onto the board as well as the healer so I can establish more control of the board. They've already used 1 purchase, so it's not very likely that they'll be able to deal with this board that's here. Because they'd have to go Tar-Stick, and then the Fan of Knives. They end up getting rid of their weapon and then conceding because there's no the writing's on the wall for what's going to happen for them. Okay, this following game I'm playing against a Shaman. Shaman quite often is playing the aggro Shaman or it's playing the mid-range one. There hasn't really been too many of the Wave of Nostalgia Shaman around, so I end up once again just going for a similar mulligan. This matchup can be quite difficult, especially since you get into a situation where your opponent doesn't, where you end up getting a situation where your opponent's able to take control of the board. And if they do take control of the board, it can be quite an issue, especially since they can use Bloodlust on turn 6 to completely remove you from the game, because their pop-off turn is earlier than your one. I end up playing down the minions from my hand rather than using the replica because it allows me to get more control of the board down, and it also puts them in a situation where they will need to trade. If they do trade, it means that I can trade more efficiently into them as well. They also aren't in a very positive situation here since they're at 3 mana, but they don't really have a board here. So I'm not too concerned about what the opponent is going to do. And what ends up happening very shortly is the opponent ends up conceding because although they, are an aggro deck, there's way too many minions on the board for the opponent to have to deal with to be able to get through to me. And then very shortly you see that they concede. Okay, this matchup I'm playing against the Death Knight. You'll also notice that they're in top 50 Legend, which I'm quite excited at this point in time to see my climb progressing quite well. Against Death Knight, it's quite similar where they'll want to be controlling the board as well. So you want to be trying to get as many minions down as possible. Hidden Gem's quite a useful card in this situation too, especially since a lot of Death Knights have dropped their Molted Magma, so they're not able to deal with anything that has stealth. They end up playing down their 2 Silverhand Recruits, so I end up just going face because if I trade into it, they'll end up just trading positively anyway. Because they have their hero power if they need to. So they end up getting a 2-drop down with that Discover card. I'm not really too concerned about what it's going to be. I end up getting using my fishing rod here because I want to be trying to get as much down as possible, and I trade into the 1/1 that's there because I want to be trying to get it so then they don't have a way to keep control of the board that's there. So the opponent in this situation could be using some ways to clear my board very easily because they do have, very efficient trades that can occur. So they'll trade the 2/2 and the 1/1 into my clergy, and then they'll end up passing the turn over to me. I do have quite a bit in my hand now that's quite efficient at trading into them. So right now I'm deciding whether I'm going to play down my 1 mana, which I end up doing since I do have quite a few minions down on the board. I also use my card there to make sure that I've got what I need to, and I'm just deciding what the best trade to do here is, to keep the 2/2 and then get a 1/1 down on the board or not. And then I get the Orbital Halo as well, which I'm going to play down very shortly. I'm just deciding which minion to put it on. And I put it down onto the minion so I can keep buffing up my guys. They play down Hellier, which isn't too much of an issue for this deck, because you draw through a few of your cards, but you don't draw through enough to really have to worry about it getting too many procs off. I draw into my Time Winder here, which is a very positive draw. And right now I'm just deciding how I'm going to deal best with their board. I end up using the Chilling Vulcan to get more buffed minions up, and I trade it with my other ship captains, my other dragon, just so I can trade more efficiently, but also I can get some more damage down on their board too. I end up putting all my damage into their face because I'm at the point where I can use the Time Winder if needed, and I've also got a very wide board that they won't have a way to deal with very easily unless they use Threads of Despair. They end up using their Threads of Despair, and it is a way to clear quite a lot of my minions that are here. But I end up keeping... I don't end up keeping any, which is, a bit of a problem. But I do end up drawing into a Frost Plague, and then that caused me not to have any real play in this following turn, because I was going to play down the 6-drop. So they did get quite lucky in terms of what minions they drew into. I play down my Whelp, and then I just end the turn. So doing that does delay me a couple of turns just because of what they ended up drawing into. So they got a little bit lucky in that situation, especially with there being about 20 cards in my deck. And then the opponent's going to be easily able to trade into me. So with that ETC, it's quite likely they're getting the Airlock Breach to be able to get some more health up onto their board. I end up playing down my dragon, and then I play the second part of the dragon down as well. I trade into the 2/1 because I want to keep trying to get as many minions down as possible. Trying to get as many of the taunt minions as possible as I can. They end up trading into my dragon, which does clear both of their minions that are there. And then they'll end up playing down their Airlock Breach that they got through their ETC. So going into this turn, I end up getting the Time Winder online, and it is okay to be doing in this situation, but I don't. I end up using it, but can be a possible way to lose this matchup, especially if they draw quite well and quite efficiently. I realize in this situation here that Orbital Halo as well doesn't get activated onto my 4/4, so I trade into the 5/4 that I have on the board, and I end up. I'm just deciding here what the best amount of way to use my mana is going to be. I end up playing down the Taunt, and I play down the Thrifty Drifter, and then I pass the turn over to the opponent. This following turn, I can get more established by just trading one of my 1/2s in, and then my 4/2. I play down to draw my cards with the 5-drop. And then I've got quite a few cards in my hand to be able to deal with the opponent, so I drew into the Ziliax, which is quite positive for me. And they also end up getting a few of my rubbish cards that, Deafen is pretty useful in this situation, but it's not too much of an issue. And then they're down to 9 health, so there's not too many situations that I would have to worry about here, especially since Death Knight doesn't usually run Reno anymore, since Reno got the nerf that happened to it. And they've already used their Threads of Despair, so there's not too many cards that they could draw into here that can cause problems for me. they end up using the Lay Down the Law, which clears my Ziliax. And then they use a Heat Wave through it as well, so they end up drawing into a few cards that are very useful to deal somewhat with this board. And then they're Fistful of Corpses. And then they have the Pit Boss as well, so they end up drawing and playing quite efficiently into my board that's here. Because the board that I had was essentially just to establish control establish control. And I draw into Blood Plague and then Gorgonzoru, so I'm not in an extremely positive situation here, so I need to just play down as much tempo as I can, and then see what ends up coming from it for my opponent. So I play down the Dreamboat as well after playing down my Whelp to get an extra 1/1, and then pass the turn over to them. So now, if I need to, I have the Delicious Cheese starting to get procced as well. I could have played down a Mantle there, but if they had taken control of the Mantle, the game would be pretty much over in that situation. Because it is possible they could get the 8 mana card that just clears the opponent's board, or if they use Ceaseless Expanse as well, that could be a bit of a problem for me too. And at this point in time, I believe they're just weighing up their options and deciding whether they have any way to deal with my board. So they play down the Headless Horseman they got, and I have enough damage on board to be able to deal with them anyway. Yeah. So, thank you for watching this, especially if you got this far. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more of my Alpha Challenge videos, and we'll end up seeing if I end up getting into that top 100 legend that's getting so close yet so far, because I ended up getting it day 1, but I don't really think that matters too much, getting it day 1 when there's, a lot of the pro players and things like that aren't involved with it. So yeah, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you later.